And we're live. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Spiritside Chats. So exciting to have everybody back and to see all these beautiful smiling faces in the morning, Monday morning. And happy new moon as well. We're having a new moon in Aries, which is all about, really, I was reading about like aligning with spirit, right? And like getting your alignment set in that spiritual nature as we're kind of, actually Aries is aligned in Pluto, or no, Pluto, sorry, Pisces. That would be curious, but as you guys are probably familiar, Pisces is at the very end of the cycle, which is all of the kind of the dreams, illusion, fantasy, kind of that end of the tarot kind of section, that dreamlike spiritual evolution. But then Aries is like the very beginning, like the identity and the self, identity of the self and the individual and the individual consciousness within the larger sphere of everything. So it's really that like kind of aligning that individual concept of your identity with the larger, bigger picture of source and all of the fantastic dreams that we can possibly dream up. And so this morning, we actually had a request from Priscilla to start the morning meditation. And so we're more than happy to pass it over to Priscilla to start us off on this wonderful Monday morning meditation. Priscilla, take it away.
Excellent. Well, just have a deep breath as you close your eyes. Be aware of your natural breathing. In and out. Let your body do what already knows. You're just the observer. Feel how in every breath cycle, your heart is beating as well. Expand and contract. A perfect rhythm that is working together to bring your multidimensional being into a 3D expression. All who you were, all who you are, and all who you will be, all is in within this instant. So never forget to listen to it. Namaste. You can open your eyes.
Thank you.
I always love being able to tap in and listen to the other meditations that all of you guys bring to the table. That was wonderful. And I feel like, you know, having the space for the sharing allows for like this, in this particular meditation, you know, it was so elegantly simple, and yet during it, you know, there's just like certain points where it just feels like the whole field of all of us watching just suddenly like connect, and I'm feeling like tingles moving down my body, being like, wow, this is great, you know. So that was really good. An excellent way to start us off too, with this topic of aligning with spirit. It's funny, it's like part of me wants to say, like, just like, let's just breathe for like an hour and a half together. There's nothing to even talk about.
We did that yesterday. Karen and Anthony and Brandon and I for like half an hour. It was wonderful.
Yeah, it's such a magical practice, isn't it? To like, it's so simple, right? And it's like, but that's like the key to everything. I remember on my ayahuasca journey at Rhythmia, there was like this huge section of it where it was just like as if spirit was just like teaching me like how to breathe. It was like, you are born again, and here's the only thing you need to know: your breath. Get it right, get it down. And the whole thing was like, my mind would float away and spirit would be like, no, come back to the breath, and would float and back to the breath over and over, just like going out and bringing it back in. And I remember leaving there and just being in the state of like, how do you even, like live life so entirely present to the breath and still like communicate with people and get things done and work on things, or, like all of the facets of life. It's so difficult and yet so simple, it seems, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, it was one of the things that I wanted to share, the meditation, because I have been working a lot in that, precisely, just being able to breathe and just meditate on the breathing. And there's something really special about it and so simple, but the breath and the heart, it's like it's even physically connected together. Like it's a perfect rhythm that both of them dance with at the same time, and it does bring these multidimensional beings that we are into just one expression. And that's why it's so important to the heart and the breathing, because it is how you express all of who you are. So I just wanted to share it with all of you.
Definitely. I'd love to open it up now too, to just, if anybody else has anything to share on this conversation to like start us off. Love to hear from you now.
In your expression of this meditation that you just allowed to flow through you there. Just a second, I want to make sure my mic is good here. What I found was, just as Jordan just mentioned, there was an instant sense. No mic.
Oh no, we can hear you. It might be.
Oh, okay. So True just said, okay, but yes.
You actually turned your levels up, and now it's like a little over loud. So if you wanted to like just bring it down a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. Let me know where it's perfect. If it's good right there, I'll leave it there. How's that? Perfect. Beautiful. Yeah. Excellent. So in that space of that tingle that comes through when there's that instant connection, there's something subtle that's revealed there, and it's something that has to do with a feeling of safety, almost, or a comfortability within our being, knowing and recognizing the spirit in another, or at least the essence of kindness or joyfulness or lovingness within another. Often that can come through the simplicity or the gentility of someone's voice. Like in sort of modern jargon, there's a term called ASMR, or I believe it's something like autonomic sensory motor response, or something like akin to that, meridian response, and it gives that tingle down one's spine, or that feeling of bliss through the body. And that's something that personally, I've been able to experience that regularly. Whenever I see somebody doing something with care and attention, it's not just something that's caused by, say, a sound field or some of the other techniques that are used to facilitate that. It comes from the gentility of purpose. And when it comes to alignment with spirit, our gentility of purpose is one of those things that can much more easily bring us back to that breath. As Jordan is talking to here, you know, how do we live in a world with so many things and so much going on and all this stuff and still yet live in the breath, in that beautiful, peaceful, almost feeling like we're being held by the divine cradle space. How do we live there and be there and be fully in our being, and then do that together, you know? And so I love that this current call and this conversation is about that. It's about what is it that we're doing to bring each other into that connectivity, in all of our different worlds, in all of those dimensions that we exist within, including, you know, the four that we can at least mention, you know, the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. You know, those four spaces, how do we bring those together and utilize them and become that unified being within ourselves, while bringing that unification of all of these unified selves together, and doing so with some level of functionality, or sometimes maybe even not functional, like just breathing together for an hour. Like, that's pretty awesome. And it's functional in a different sense. It's functional more in the spiritual, emotional, mental sense than, and even physical, but just not in a way that we're trying to accomplish anything sense, which is pretty cool. It's like I think in the world of Buddhism, there's a bodhisattva and the arent. Well, the arent is like, the bodhisattva is the path that so many of us are taking, where we're achieving that enlightened state, but then we're coming back down the mountain to help everybody to get to that place. Well, on the other side of that is the arent, which is the sort of, well, once I've achieved enlightenment, I've achieved it I've achieved enlightenment for all things, and there's no more there's just the transcendence, the being in that space. There's the being quality of the arent, which is just simply being as life, and then there's the doing quality of the bodhisattva. So it's almost like we're shifting into that being faculty in those moments of just breathing together. So either way, it's really, really good. And I personally like the arent's path a little bit more. It's a little more challenging to do in this day and age, with so much focus on doing and accomplishment and you know, the building of things. But if we keep it in our heart, it's still a great way to begin. So I hope, you know, in short, what I'm trying to say here is that even in this small group here, the feeling of connectivity through that safety of space is already so powerful. Imagine bringing that every day, as Jordan's alluding to, where we have that breath, and we carry that singularity of the ability to come back and come back and come back and come back to the presence of our spirit, the presence of our being, cleared of all of the stuff that's bringing us out of it, and just staying within that space. I hope that feels good. I hope that sounds nice and feels on point with today's topic, and can kind of spurn some ideas. I'd love to know how more of us and more of you are actually bringing yourself present and allowing yourself that gentility, that softness, to feel like you're being cradled by divinity, at your own as well as divinity itself. Throughout the process of daily life, as we do these connections, as we come up with people, as we start new journeys through life, as very much is this new moon in Aries. It's the beginning of this new journey, the beginnings of a lot of great things. How are we carrying that stability, that presence to this space in connectivity? Anyway, that's what I'm curious how we're all doing. So how we're all doing this, and what we're doing. What are the methods? What are we doing to do so? Maybe Jordan or Aaron, I'd love to hear more, maybe a little bit later, about how you're applying the path that was shown to you when you were down at Rhythmia, you know, so that we can get a little bit more of a feeling for how does the facilitation of sacred medicine help to bring that to the forefront, so that when we are actually in our daily life, we can kind of get a grip more of the lessons that are being brought through that. Is there a way that you've been able to get to that stabilized place, so there is more connectivity, there is more stabilization through your daily living? But that's a side note.
Yeah. Thank you, Eddie. Your words there are really on point. ASMR is like the feeling I get when I'm listening to you speak. So I'm just like, it's good. But in regards to your question of not only what practices do we do to stay mindful in any given moment, but also what have we sort of translated through from our experiences using plant medicine. The first one to me, like the best answer came from the intentions that they sort of requested us to go through at that actual facility, which was, the first intention is, show me who I have become. So that right there is the, like, let me look at myself. Because a lot of times too, our focus is really on the external world and on like, what am I supposed to do in this world? But the meditation of like, how has that shaped my perspective of who I'm supposed to be or what I'm supposed to do? Like, how have all of these events shaped my perspective of reality? Show me who I have become. And with that meditation, at least for myself personally, all the stuff that was like contra energy, if my main intention's going out in one way, if I have a vibration that's counterintuitive towards that, then where's that coming from? And help me identify that in myself. And with that realization, or with even just the mindset of continual self-realization of I never want to stop going through myself and my behavior and from that analytical perspective and say, like, can I do this better? Or was that the best way to do it? And it's that continual self-observation. And so the practice that I take personally is just making sure that I have enough time in a day to sit down with myself and really review, okay, what have I done? How have I been in alignment with spirit? Is there a refinement that I can make here? And there's always like that closer and closer to 5, like there's always room for improvement. So it's just the continual mindset of, am I paying attention to the things that I can observe within myself, or am I like just going around willy-nilly about it? So it's that intention of, show me who I've become and now let me work through this.
Did you want to go over the other 2 intentions from Rhythmia?
Take it away, man.
Well, yeah, their first one, as Aaron said, was show me who I have become. The second one is at all costs, or by any means. I think it's at all costs. And then the third one is heal my heart. And they together, the 3 of those kind of set the space for the journeys that, like, you know, people can bring all of and whatever their intentions are, whatever it is that they're seeking help in. But these main 3 kind of set like an overarching framework for with which in the transformations can take place. And so it's really amazing just like to go through, you know, and experience that with everybody as we're, you know, in that space. And to answer your question, Eddie, you know, one of the things that I wrote in the description of even of this YouTube call was the practice, because it always comes back to, like, and for me, and even coming back here, it's I've had this kind of recurring experience of being like, what are my practices, like daily practices, right? Because in some regards, routine is really good. But if it becomes too rigid of a structure, then it can lead to no longer being natural, right? And so there has to be this ability to flow freely and make changes accordingly, but also maintain a level of routine with, for example, daily meditation or daily yoga or eating a proper diet and whatnot, you know? And for many of us, I feel in the spiritual community, kind of going through this as we're figuring out our practices and discovering ourselves, there's sort of this wave of like lots of practice, everything's really good, and then maybe like you're like, wow, I feel so great, I can just coast here, and then you kind of stop meditating for a while, or you kind of slow down on maybe like waking up at specifically this time, and then you start to feel like, oh, I'm tired all the time, or I'm this, or I'm not feeling as good. And it's like, well, it's because I forgot my practice, so let me jump on it again. And kind of like riding that wave and refining it, kind of as Aaron was saying, closer to 5, so that every, you get to a place where you just know, like, to keep on the practice, essentially, and not fall off of it. Or, if you're feeling like things changing, adjusting your practice in a way that maintains the level of alignment, or continues to increase your alignment with spirit, rather than kind of falling off and eating a bunch of, say, junk food, or, just putting yourself in a position to carry, a denser energy. But at the same time, if that should come to pass, there's a reason for it. And it encourages you to actually sit and go inside and go, what's causing this, like within me? What actions, what emotion, what feeling am I, pulling into to learn? What lesson is there for me to learn? And eventually you learn the lesson, and you shift back, and then you continue riding that wave, and that's a very common thing. And yeah. So practices, I mean, I'd love to actually open that up and hear, like, what are your practices for everybody in the group? Maybe we can go one at a time. And we've got True Human. I'm sorry, I don't know your name in this moment, but if we got your mic working, let's take it away. There is still no audio. Oh, so close. Is it Austin though? Is that right? No, Austin was our other friend. Austin Ticknor, I think.
It's Devin.
Devin. Yay! Well, Devin, while you get your mic working, I'd love to pass it around. Maybe Karen or Anthony, if you guys want to jump in. I'd love to hear. We'd all love to hear what some of your practices are in your own aligning with spirit.
Hi, guys. Let's see. Okay. Well, I wrote a couple things down. I think I first wanted to thank just everyone, because I feel like, I don't really think about it, but now that we're talking about it, I guess like I can bring that energy in, because, when I'm doing the work, when I'm like trying to align every day, I feel like, oh, it's like just me and I'm walking in this huge world, but like actually everyone, all of us, all over the world are like doing the same thing I am doing. And all of us are trying to get back to the breath and trying to be in the present moment. So that just like expands my, like, when I get back to that moment, I'm going to remember all of you guys and be like, okay, like they're all with me, and that's going to make it so much stronger right where I am. So I just want to say thank you for that. I want to say thank you for everyone who's watching this call, like now and in the future, for watching us grow, because like we're on this live, right? But then like also growing with us. You guys are so amazing, and like for just like being a part of this community. You guys are pretty beautiful, even though we don't get to see your faces. One of the practices, I think, is pretty much like jumping back into like the present moment. Like it like kind of hits me in the face, because sometimes I do like I'm busy, so I have things to do and tasks to get done, and sometimes I'm kind of like a procrastinator, so I'll do it all in my head before I actually do it. And then like by the end of the day, or throughout my day, and I like come back to, I'm like, okay, it's done. Okay, I'm like, phew, like come back, I'm like, oh, okay, this is where I am, this is what I'm doing, like I'm here, and kind of like just kind of step back. I also like to see myself through a third point of view perspective. Like it's not just, and that kind of like, it's like a higher self perspective, where it's like, okay, like what, I don't know, I just like to see myself from like a different view, like observing myself, observing the moment. That's actually really cool. And then and then I actually have to like continue to what Jordan was saying. I think that like I'll be doing really good and I'm like, oh, things are awesome. And then I fall, like, and then something's wrong. And I'm like, okay, well, gotta keep continuing, you know? And then like we rise up again, and then it's like this kind of wave. But you know, I think another big practices that I've been doing is I've been trying to align to the highest timeline or the highest opportunities, the highest possibilities with what God wants us to be. And like I've been just like picturing all of these opportunities and kind of like manifesting them and focusing that immediately when I get like a bad thought about like a bad reality or a bad possibility. I'd be like, well, what if this could happen? And then like I'll think about that and I'll resonate with that, and then like I'll continue like to let it flow, you know. Even if I fall, you know, we're all here and you guys are all continuing to do the work, and man, so am I. So just that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. That was great. And yeah, don't even worry about it from the perspective of it is something we all go through. And also sometimes I think, you know, when we say like we're going, you know, you're elevated and then you fall, like sometimes it's not so much that you're just like, or any of us kind of getting careless, but rather that through the process of unpacking, you know, the ego, really to get to the root and cores of what's really inside of us, you know, these like deep subconscious programmings from childhood and stuff like that, and family dramas and traumas as a kid in school or whatever it is, that like it's, you know, it's like this thing needs to come out, is sort of the bubbling up, and it sort of pulls your attention away a little bit, and you're like, whoa, there's a vibration, there's a wiggle in me that has to come out, and in that it's like, oh, it feels like a crap because it's, you know, it's moving through you, but there's this thing that also we learned at Rhythmia, which is what's coming is going, and that like as it's coming out, it's coming up for a reason, and you just breathe through it and you move through it, and then it's gone, because the process of it coming gives you the opportunity to face it and look at it, observe it, grow from it, learn from it, and all of that. And then once that acknowledgement is faced and you find that clarity, then it has no choice but to transmute into something else. I'd also like to just say welcome to Philip, who just joined and logged on. And oh, we might have just got Devin back on a different mic. With a crazy echo, I'm going to mute myself. Devin, take it away. Oh no, he wants another second. Okay, back to Philip. Philip or Anthony, actually, if either of you in this moment has a sort of a spiritual practice that you'd like to share, or sort of your own practice of just what it means to align with spirit, we'd love to open it up to you guys.
For sure. Is this mic okay? It's a new mic. I don't know if you can hear me all right.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm gonna actually raise your audio just a little bit, but it's good.
Cool. Yeah, I loved how y'all were mentioning or really emphasizing the breath in the beginning, because it's cool to me when you think about the word spirit. Actually, the word spirit has the Latin root spirar, which means to breathe. So like in a very practical sense, when you talk about the spirit, what you're talking about is this breath of life, which you can look at, you know, sort of metaphysically or physical sense, the real breath that we all share. And that's the main thing that I like to think about, is how I mean, I don't know the technicalities of it, but I've heard this statistic where, like, you know, we're all breathing the same like molecules that you know, Galileo and Christ and all these people back way back in the day were breathing. And so it's like we all share the same breath. And it's really just going in and out of us. So for me, when you're aligning with spirit, a very practical way to do it is to just take a moment to become aware of your breath, like we do so often, you know. And when you do that, you're really sort of, when I think of alignment, I think of there's like an element of synchronicity and time to it. And so when you take that moment to become aware of that which connects us all, you're kind of syncing up to, you know, the greater collective, and sort of setting your intentions and really sort of giving God and the universe an opportunity to work with you, as opposed to just being unconscious, you know, sort of drifting along. So that, for me, a very practical way of aligning with spirit is just taking the 5-10 seconds, you know, to literally, like, it can be that simple, like 5 seconds of just like stopping, taking a breath, having a sacred thought, and then continuing. And for me, it's those little things consistently that present really cool things on a daily basis. You can just find yourself interacting with people that perhaps you never would have ran into that person had you not taken that 5 seconds to stop and consider your intentions and everything like that. So yeah, just taking those brief pauses periodically to align physically and mentally with the breath and the intention. So I loved what you brought up earlier, Eddie, about just like, I forget the two terms, the bodhisattva and the other one, but yeah, just being in that presence, living it out. It's very, really good. To Anthony, I suppose, if you have anything.
Yes, thank you, Philip, and
for sure.
Thank everyone. Nice to see you all again. Joined in a bit late, so I just wanted to say hello and give my love to you guys. And talking about spiritual practices, I did have something I want to share, and that's something I was engaged in last night, actually, with my brother. He's acting out in LA, and we decided to have a talk, and just I was like leading him through what I do in like my ritual practice for meditation, because he's really not into that sort of stuff, and he was purely seeing it from this kind of intellectual point of view. So he perceived it, everything that I'm doing as trying to gain some kind of intellect and to like preach that, you know. So I really wanted to show him that this is within himself, and it's not, there's nothing outside of yourself that you don't already have in you. And so, you know, we lit a candle, we sat in silence and just focused on the breath for a while, became comfortable and centered in that situation, forgetting all of the hassle of what was happening before and what could potentially happen after. And by realigning, you know, with spirit and being in that stillness, in that moment, sharing a moment of silence, we reconnected with the power of choice that we have. And we will always have that, no matter what situation or circumstance we're in. Just like you said, Philip, very, very nice analogy, that just 5-10 seconds of sitting and having a sacred thought will realign you with stillness. That's what we hold on to. That's what we take back from that emptiness, is the stillness. And it emanates out. If you hold stillness, it emanates out. And so after that, all of the problems and troubles of what was happening before were melted away, because if you know, and the more it becomes present in the life, that everything is controllable. The situation you have, if you visualize a moment, you can build moments from scratch, and you can do that, on a daily basis in long-term prospects as well as short-term, creating moments from the stillness. And the more you visualize it, the more you create the potentialities, the more you envisage them and start to bring them into your actions and into your words, everything. It starts to become more real and then sedimented into matter, into reality. And what is time but just energetic vibrations all collected together, into atoms? It's illusion. It's real. We said it. It's an illusion that we've created that was real. So yeah, we went through that, and I also wanted to speak quite briefly about this rising and falling that we're all going through individually and collectively, and that is that we have all been through as a human race through the falling out of a unity. We discovered magic, and we discovered the beauty of ritual and the beauty of the collective power that we can share. And at some point we've begun the forgetting, and it has become more of a fearful thing, more of an occultic, mystic thing, and that knowledge has slowly faded away and still there, but not held to be true and not held to be good and full of light. And so this has brought back this concept of the dark side of things, right? We all have good and we all have evil or light, darkness. So we cannot just head towards the light all the time. We need to walk in balance by exploring both sides. When you have light and dark together, they unite and they become the way forwards, the way that serves both, the way that serves everyone in the equation. And that's something that's happening whether we like it or not. No matter how much we try to avoid it, we will always be compelled to explore both sides of life, both sides of our humanity. And I think through ritual practices, we learn to see what's coming. We learn to know how we will react to things and the vibration, the waves that are emanating out from all different sources, and become in tune with them and know that if the shit's coming, then you're going to go through that and you learn it, and it will be a wondrous, beautiful thing that should then help you channel the light more. As well as when the good times are good, you make the best of it and you live in the moment. So that's something I wanted to share with you guys. Thanks for listening.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. And Devin is raising his hand. I think we got his mic now, so take it away, brother.
So for me personally, one of the big things that I've been doing here recently to really do constant practice, if you will, is basically remembrance that the act of breathing isn't just about, breathing. The act of filling up as well as lessening. It's a cycle that not just has to do with our bodily systems. It has to do with basically everything. As our lives are awesome, it's like as our lives are good, as we're bringing in good things, and as our lives are becoming better, it's like we're breathing in these positive, good things that life is bringing towards us. And then as life takes these things away, we have to expel the fact that we have to remain positive, because exhaling is never a negative thing. You exhale through breath in order to let go of the carbon dioxide, and so that you can also bring in more oxygen. So within life, the way I see it when it comes to the breath, like I just talked about, when life brings you good things, you inhale those good things. When life begins to take those things away from you, because that is the cyclical life of nature, you need to exhale, let those things go, and enter into that emptiness within that state, that meditative state, saying that I guess I might not have what I have had, but that is because what is coming is going to be good. because every breath that you take is better than the last one, because every breath you take flushes your body with new oxygen, re-energizes your cells, re-energizes mitochondria, and it brings new life to your body with every single breath that you take. Every single exhale you take lets go of old life, and it's the same way, I believe. It's just you got to keep that mindset throughout the day, because life breathes. Life is cyclical, just like you. You got to be willing to inhale and exhale with it. And I think that's my piece.
I love that, how you said exhaling is never a negative. I mean, I guess in some cases it could be viewed as unpleasant to have to let things go, but just like you said, it's just a cycle, and so it can be seen as a positive. You know, things being taken away, it's just the predecessor to receiving once again. I think, Joshua, were you going to say something?
You basically said exactly what I wanted to say. I really love that, Devin. Thank you. Because I agree, life is dynamic. It's never static. It's never an analog, this or that. It's always moving. I love Taoism, the concept of yin and yang, that one becomes the other. Each thing contains the seed of the other. There is no order without chaos, no chaos without order, no light without day, no day without night. You need one to contrast the other, or we wouldn't have a concept and word for it. As for daily practices, I meditate every day. That's about my only daily practice. I do a variety of different meditations depending on the day, but always in the morning, it's come into the breath, don't speak for as long as possible. You know, I try to go for an hour without speaking. After I wake up, just breathing and being. And then I'll start to speak. But time spent in silent meditation frees you up from that need to get it right. You have more time to just be and let the thoughts that you don't really need to stick around float away, like clouds on a breeze. Other than that, I try to do something new every day, no matter how small. And every time I get the opportunity to help someone with a small act of kindness, I do that. Those are my 3 main daily practices.
Thank you so much for sharing. I noticed when you had started talking, you had said that you love the Tao, and Priscilla held up, I think it was the Tao of Pooh, right? There it is. It's funny because all of the things that everyone's sharing so far is like exactly on the same wavelength of, you know, when passing it back and forth. My first thought is like, oh, I could share this thing, and then like you say exactly the same thing, and it's like, oh, perfect. I don't even have to. Priscilla, I want to pass it to you actually, to share maybe a little bit about your experience both with breath and flow, but maybe even as it relates to that book, because it is one of my favorites, and I'd love to hear your review on it, how it's been going so far.
Oh, it's been amazing. I actually thank you for the recommendation, because I love it. It's amazing. And it just talks about how brings that awareness to who the things that everything is, right, at the moment. And we perceive time just in a different way, like past, present, future. But you guys know that time is just it's an illusion that we create. So everything is within one moment, and that's why meditation and being still, it's so important, and the breath is so important, because it brings that instant into awareness in ourselves. So good, bad, evil is just labeling things. And this book actually makes a great explanation about the Taoism, how things just are. There's no good or bad, or because maybe a bad situation is going to bring you something good later on, or a teaching, or the other way around. Maybe some good thing that happened to you, it's going to bring something maybe not as good later on the road. Like, just we have to accept things as they are and accept who we are. And maybe sometimes we go through we don't go through our meditations how we should, or we eat the junk food that we shouldn't, but it's all part of that cycle that we have to go through in order to understand and really achieve the enlightenment that we should achieve. So it's been quite the ride for me too. I try to concentrate, meditate in the mornings, at nights, and in between, because sometimes work, or sometimes things can get a little bit hectic outside in society. So always bring that back, that awareness, that breathing, just 5 minutes in the bathroom, just breathe in, be in contact with yourself. It always changes things around. You're more connected with your own self, and it's easier to take action if you are more connected to this global consciousness within yourself. So that's me.
Thank you. Yeah, very well said. It also talks about that, like the uncarved block, right? And how like Winnie the Pooh is like the perfect example of it, because he's just always just in the flow with whatever he wants in any particular moment, and it's not about like setting an identity. And that's kind of the nature of the Taoist practice of the uncarved block, is that it's, you know, it's like a block ready to be sculpted, but it can become anything. Right? And the moment that you sculpt your block, like if you like create your ego or establish your ego, you're carving that block into a fixed form. But in the raw, uncarved block, it can become anything still. And this is like, it's sort of a practice to like live from that space, and to really embody, yeah, like the essence of possibility, I suppose, like the Fool in the tarot. So with that, what's next? Aaron, we haven't heard from you for a while.
Yeah, I've just been appreciating all this really good conversation that's been going on here. Again, like you had said before, it's like I don't even need to speak. It's just the universe is speaking all the thoughts perfectly through everyone else. It's just so synchronistically perfect that it's like, yeah, it's good. Yeah. Devin, go ahead.
Now, one thing I would like to discuss with all of you is, since we are talking about being one with the spirit today, one thing I've been really concerned about for a really long time is actually like how I know spirit science and the channel is really helping to propagate, bring in knowledge about the spirit, knowledge about how to just be happy, truly happy, to as many people as it can. But for me personally, I've noticed a lot of times, like, what we're trying to do, it's hard for normal people to fit into because life is so, life's just messy. And it's hard for them to find the flow, find the smoothness that they need to really start becoming part of these practices and really joining in with spirit. So me personally, I'd like to discuss how can we make it easier for just your average everyday person to be one with spirit? Because people like us, we know how to meditate, we know how to be one with the breath and silence the thoughts, but most people don't. Like, they just can't do it.
It's a great question. I saw Anthony wanting to make a comment. I got a few cents I want to add to it too, but I'll let Anthony go.
All right, thanks, Aaron. I'll pass on to you after. Yeah, quickly, you just got something to the forefront of my mind there, and that's how can people kind of get into this? Like, it seems like crazy. We seem like crazy people to a lot of the mainstream average person, right? And life's messy, like you said. Life's messy, chaotic. Got a lot of stress on you. The weight is on. So, how can you get out of that? And I'd say is just have some fucking fun. Like, forget about your ego. Forget about who you perceive yourself as and how you perceive other people perceiving you. And I'm talking to you guys now, but I'm just saying you for like everybody, right? When we need to be like actors. Actors can choose a character and be the character. They know the life, they know the backstory, and they just emanate it. And they'll be like, oh, I'll be the crazy scientist today. Hey, well, I'm gonna be a wise old man, or whatever you want to be. Just like let it out and cry if you need to, shout if you need to, be quiet and be still, and do not say shit if that's what you need to do. Like, and just blow your ego apart. And when you blow your ego apart, you become the part of you that's seeing it, the observer of that, and you take the pieces that you need to collectively make an ego construct to be in each moment. If the moment dictates you need to be a certain way, let that flow. You have the choice. You have the power of choice. So yeah, Aaron.
Oh my gosh, Anthony, that was super funny.
It was really good.
Yeah. But I mean, the way that you had like your last little comment there of it's all in choice, that would have been very close to the point that I was going to start talking about. For my own personal journey, I had to like let me phrase this. I was always given the opportunity to follow a spiritual path. Like, that potential was always present. It was always like the information's there, do the right thing, like it was actively taught to me. But I had to make my own choice first of whether or not I wanted to actually adhere to that path or whether I wanted to go off and have my own experience. Now, after many years of having my own experience and realizing that the behavior that I was doing wasn't really conducive to the reality that I wanted to build for myself, I realized that I had to start making some changes. And from that state and that perspective of, oh, wait, maybe I could be doing something better. Maybe I have some influence in this reality in myself. Now I want to make a change because my experiences aren't reflecting what I want to create. So I'm going to now go inside myself and do some work to try and help change that. But I only came to that realization of, oh, wait, maybe I need to change this because there was something that needed changing. So the amount of pain and suffering, sorrow and torment and hurt and, everything that I was going through at that time catalyzed the environment for me to go, all right, now you're at a turning point. It's either going to be change and make some serious life choices or continue down this road. And I know that you don't want that to happen. So it was sort of like that analogy of necessity is the mother of all invention. Like I personally had to put myself to the end of the line and go, okay, well, now what? And that's when I turned myself around. It had to be like a do or die situation. Isn't that the sort of the expression? Now, I mean, I know in my own personal life story, like I was given every opportunity before then to start my meditation practices and to start paying attention to my breath, analyzing my thoughts. Are these positive thoughts? Are these negative thoughts? But it wasn't until that was an actual necessity before it was like, okay, wait a second, now things need to change. And I think due to collective consciousness of more people having these conversations, I think that process is speeding up. People are realizing like, oh, okay, we can make these changes now and we don't have to push ourselves to the absolute end of the line before realizing that we can kind of like take our behavior and make those changes. But the key point there is all in choice of like, how would you suggest to another person to change their behavior if they're not in a state where they even think that their behavior is bad or not what they want to do, right? So for my simple answer to that question, it would sort of be they have to want it. I don't think you could willingly force ideology onto another person and have it go over well. It's like it's got to be wanting it within yourself first. And I feel like the best way that we then can help others in that capacity is just to walk that path for them, to like illustrate this is how good it can get, right? This is what being in a state of love can look like. And then they're going to look around and go like, oh, I didn't know it could be fun, or raising that bar. And now they're going to suddenly feel inside of themselves like, I was good before, but now I see all these people living up on this level. And now suddenly there's that need again. Now I have to raise my vibration another level because of that construct. So that's the way I look at it.
You know, I really love how you go there, Aaron, and really everybody here. We've brought up so many really lucid points that for everyone. And Devin, I mean, to your question, you know, how do we bring this to people that are just looking to live a good life, but they're living this sort of very confusing, very confuddling place that for some reason imbues upon us this life and lifestyle and sets of circumstances and things that seem so vastly far outside of our control and often painful. You know, how do we live? How I'm dealing with my pain right now, man. How am I supposed to, you know, focus on spirituality? You know, it doesn't make any sense. What I need is some Advil for my headache and, you know, maybe somebody to love. You know, that's the kind of thing that for so many people, it's the core driver. You know, I want to feel good and I want to feel like my needs are being met. It's very, like, if we take it right back to what people need and what people are asking for, it's hard to start. Well, you know, if they're not having their base needs met, survivability, safety, and feeling like they're part of, say, like a familial group of people with someone to love and maybe something to do in the world. Well, if those basic things aren't already established, then it's going to be next to impossible to get that person to want to imbue their life with more of the spiritual dialogue. Because when we face the spiritual dialogue head on, it's a much more ethereal space. It doesn't have as much of what would be a perceived practicality in the world, although it's one of the most practical places that we can start once those that are in the know that it's really the beginning place for so many things. However, like I said, until those basics are being met, it's very difficult to get there. And so I want to turn this to a conversation, or just to touch on a point right now, just to give everybody a sense of peace, a sense of it's not your fault that you can't or haven't been able to get to this place. If of course you're one of those individuals who are having this challenge. And it's simply that the world right now is in a place where there are so many things going on that are contrary energy to spiritual energy, that are contrary energy to living a life in the flow. So many things, like, for instance, chemicals in food. If you live next to a big agricultural farm and they're doing their spraying, the 9 or 10 times a year, they'll go through a process of spraying the crops. Your hormone system, your endocrine system may go into some level of disruption. And that could cause all sorts of emotional challenges. Your thoughts may go on a journey that you weren't prepared for. Your physical body may start to somatize different things, and you'll suddenly be walking around with a migraine. You didn't know where it came from. You know, the types of foods that we eat are encouraging various different things. The thought viruses, it's almost like junk thoughts that come from mass media, from watching television, from reading a lot of different types of very low ball, not so great books. All these things contribute to a mental, like an mental matrix that gets us locked in. Yeah, it gets us kind of locked into this framework that we can't quite see through. And if we notice, one of the most important things that I think that we need to do is recognize that these are all actual bodies. They're living, they're alive. They're not static. Like the mind, it's not this static thing that just kind of happens. It's a living embodiment of a collective mass of information and energy and all sorts of other things that we don't really have to get into the details of, but it's a living embodiment of the collective inertia of mankind. Some call it the Akashic field, or the morphogenic field, or whatever you want to call it. It's this field of matrix. Same with the physical body. The physical body is a field, and we see much of it outside right now. That physical matrix out there that we think is just a tree or just some soil or just whatever, just a crystal grid. Well, that's not just a fill in the blank. That's our extended physical body. And when that's not functioning and up to speed, and we're not living with it and as it, then our physical bodies can't be what they truly need to be. When we're not ingesting the thought patterns of our divine self, when we're not feeling the emotions of what God would want us to feel, what our deepest lover or our most caring parent would want us to experience. If we're not going to those places regularly, and for some of us, we have to do this on purpose, and we may have to use the imagination first. And it might feel fake at first when you're trying to give yourself that emotional, mental space, physical even, and never mind spiritual yet. It requires that initial impetus from yourself or from a very caring other, you know. And to all of your points, the Tao, the Tao of Pooh, you know, the whole idea of the block and all that kind of stuff. Well, I mean, we've had that just as long in one of the other traditions, and that's, Christ saying, unless you turn and become like children, you're never going to get into the kingdom of heaven. You're never going to be able to experience that space. And we just need to ask ourselves, what does it look like to be a child, but in an adult world? How do we live that humble space where we're allowing the universe to cradle us all the time? We're allowing all of this to be our parental body, but we're also allowing the fractal going in to be that same thing. We're allowing our inner voice to say, hey, guess what? Here's a challenge. This is going on in your body and it feels like ache in the chest. Deal with that. What is that? Seriously, go to that space and feel, why am I feeling this tightness in my chest? Why am I feeling this ache in my gut? Why does my foot hurt? Why is my elbow in pain right now? How come my neck just got a kink? What are these things? Like, these are physical somatizations of energy moving through the body, and they could be rooted in so many different things. Ask yourself, where do I live? Do I live near a big industrial farm? Because if that's the case, you may be going and you, for some reason, have all these medical complexes that the industrial medical establishment doesn't know how to figure out. Well, these are things that we have to be able to address collectively and consciously. We have to look at them. These are the shadows of our collective present right now, and we have to be able. And there's no judgment. If you are an industrial farmer, thank you, first of all, for going through the process of bringing the world food. At the same time, I invite you to please, because you're in that space, do something, start a conversation with your peers, just get involved somehow to see if there can be a shift, because we all require that. We need you to do this. We are here speaking on a higher level. The word higher and lower, it's not really very relevant, but we're speaking on spirit. Spirit is predicated on being able to understand that the mental, emotional, and physical bodies are required to be in balance to even start to play in that realm, at least with some level of lucidity. We live at a huge advantage, but also at a great disadvantage. Those like Rudolf Steiner, they existed before the chemical industrial complex became so prevalent and food was bombarded, and our electromagnetic field has been blasted by so much of the technological advancements of today. So we have much less of an ability to be clarified in our being, but so much more ability to be doing what we're doing right now, which is serving up that collective plate of excellence, and hopefully being able to get that across to as many people as we can, so that we can course correct for that unfortunate blip in the humanity's evolutionary process, and get back to that golden age, or move into the golden age that is our birthright, that is prophesized, that is potentialized, whatever you want to call it, and just start to live in that space. So, maybe a short answer to a long-winded dialogue here. When it comes down to being present to all the things that we are, know that we are so much more. We're already doing everything that we can, and it's not your fault if you're feeling like you're out of whip. It's if you're out of step, because so many things are playing at you right now, around you right now, that could pull you out. And that's why, the whole idea of the spiritual warrior, or the light warrior, or the light worker, or spiritual worker, that kind of thing is so prevalent today, because it does require a certain level of standing strong in your position, being the strength of character that would be God's hand through you, if you will, if you want to, speak to pure strength. So bringing this to the masses, get people to eat better, get people to sleep more thoroughly, start to participate in heartwarming conversations, things that are inspiring, talk about love, like Anthony, have some fucking fun, like do things that are legitimately valuable to the day, and bring that course correction to what you want in your world. And the more of us that do that, the more of us, like, we vote with our dollars, we vote with our actions, we vote with our language, we vote with our conversation. When we participate in the things that we truly, truly want, that longingness, that's when we create the shift. We're all participating in it. So let's just be the support, or the initiator of these actions. I hope that kind of brings things into a bit of a perspective there, because we speak on all these lofty principles of spirituality and meditation and these types of things, which are excellent power tools. But for those of us that don't go there already, one of the best things you could do is just smile at somebody walking down the street, strike up a conversation in the grocery aisle when you're just hanging out, and it's just this sort of awkward, like, just kind of hanging out. It's all weird and nervous. Just strike up just little things that every day can be done to initiate that blessing in the world. So I could go on about these types of things. So I'm just going to let that go back to the room here, and hopefully that's good.
Devin, you have your hand up, but also you don't have to raise your hand. If if there's a silence, you can just click that mic and go. But also thank you, Eddie.
Of mine from school. It's actually kind of awesome that you bring up about large scale farming and all that, especially Rudolf Steiner, because one of the guys that I follow on YouTube, Dan Kittredge is his name, he was doing a class teaching people about what he calls mindful farming. And he was talking about how Rudolf Steiner, he would teach people his methods, and then whenever they were done with their classes and stuff, his students would ask him, well, why is it that we can't stay in this, spiritualized higher being of state throughout the entire day? And Rudolf Steiner actually told them it's because your food doesn't have enough soul force. It's because large-scale farms these days, we use pesticides, we use fungicides, we use industrial methods that don't really get you personal with the plant and get you to spend time with the plant. I mean, he was literally talking about how it's because of we've taken ourselves out of our own food production that our food is killing us. It doesn't have the soul part of it that we put in that gives us that mindful state of being.
We broke the connection to the greater physical reality that we are. We're poisoning our collective body, and then ingesting that, assuming that that's going to be quote unquote, food. Well, sure, it might be food spelt with like PHUDE or something like that. It's like phony food, but it's not sustenance. It's not soul food, as you mentioned, right? So it's very, very good.
Well, if you remember, like Caligula from the Romans, he was had a lot of lead exposure, and that caused him to be a freak. So that's an example of psychosis. Psychosis is usually, it can be caused by drugs, it can be caused by all sorts of other things, and basically it's it can be brought on by an overloading of the serotonin and dopamine, and then putting in like, for example, taking Ritalin too much, taking like too much different medications cause you to go into a psychosis state. So that's an example of what happens to some when they're in a state of psychosis. So what it all ties into is when people have lost track of humanity, which is a very difficult thing to grasp when you're in psychosis. Usually you have to do two things. One, you have to let it play out, but you just have to be in a safe position, because it will have to get to a point where your brain overloads. That's what I've experienced. Like one time I was brought to the hospital, and I was seeing all sorts of like Egyptian shit, and eventually I overloaded and fell asleep, and the next day I was completely normal, and I was like, what the fuck? So, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to say that, but I think that was said on the stream earlier. um, anyway, so yeah, it's easy to bring someone out of psychosis that way, or another way is just enforcing reality, like as long as things are routine and disciplined, and you kind of go through a routine, and that will occupy the time that psychosis could occur. I had to dedicate an hour or more every day to go in my courtyard or back at my parents' house, where I had a training pit, which I used my bare feet every day and pounded it into the ground in a circle that was about a pretty wide circle, foot to foot easily, of ground compounded for me trancing. And trancing is a way to jump into psychosis, but to move out of psychosis and to move out of the different, if you close your eyes and listen to music, you're going to be able to trance and move to the different chi and stuff like that. So, oh my God. Anyway, so yeah, so it's easy to do snap out of psychosis. What I did was I created a routine where if I'm in the circle, I'm in complete psychosis. So I'm out of the circle, I have no psychosis. And what I did was I walked inside the circle, trance, and I could just keep inside of it, spin around, and move to the energy or whatever, and move between the frequencies. And then I step out of that, and the frequency closes, and then I'm inside of a kind of like a human. I find my humanity again, which is something that you can lose when you're in a state of psychosis. So by stepping out of the circle, I find my humanity again, and be completely normal with my parents, with my co-workers. I'm an excellent coder. Everything is going perfectly, making money, and people don't give me any trouble. But it's important to have both. If you have a high functioning brain, like I have bipolar 1, which is mania. Mania is like your brain spirals out of control, and then you start going into psychosis, and then you start schizophrenia, hallucinations, blah blah blah. But then what I did was I isolated it to the circle inside my backyard. So that's kind of a story of psychosis. Hopefully that helps people.
Thank you for
Pretty
sharing.
good.
Really like
It
what you
reminds me
said
of
there about confining your psychosis to a spot, or to take what's what's bad or what's perceived, what you don't want to share with others.
I don't want it to be in my mind. I don't want it to be in my reality. And I don't want it to be part of my humanity. So I stand aside to it.
And you need to share that still. Like we need to hear that, and we need to know what you know and feel what you feel. It's just about delivering it in a way that is not generating the same fear that it's been pregnant, you know, the way that you have.
And I understand, like, the exploration of the mind can lead to positive and negative things. You know, it's kind of like a deep space between your, you know, your conscious and your super conscious. You know, you're going through the miasma of your subconscious, and you see and feel many things. It's just like daydreaming. Everyone daydreams, everyone dreams. And they're just stuck in their unconscious, which is subconscious, which to reach the bridge to superconscious, which always exists. It can either be done in dreams, and it can be done in but I don't know.
Letting us know how it's going, and you know, I hope that you continue to find peace in looking through those experiences and exploring that psychosis, and continue to keep us up to date.
I just love to share something with you right now, just in a traditional perspective, especially in the native cultures, like the native and shamanic cultures. When somebody from the tribe started to go through the kinds of experiences that you're speaking about, now, mind you, those were often much less created through modern challenges. However, when there was an issue, especially a psychosis-based issue, in somebody, and they started to act in those sort of schizophrenic or very, well, just psychosis is a great word for it. They actually saw that they were going through the process of an evolution. They were going through a spiritual evolution, and they were treated as if what was happening is they were becoming a mystic. They were becoming the next style of shaman, so to speak, or they were born into that tradition. They were always a little bit different to begin with. They always had a little bit of a tweak in their personality, but then they go through something of a crisis where it comes to the surface, and it's in that, because what you just described, what you just did in your backyard, is actually a traditional shamanic sacred space. That's where they go to do their work, and then they would come back out of that sacred space, and they would act in the tribe, however, quote unquote, normally that would look from you. Once you're touched by spirit in that way, and once you go through that space, you're never really the same. You're never really socially the same or anything like that. Yeah. However, what is really empowering about that is that you are being born to a much higher resonance and a much higher selfhood in that space, provided that it's not some sort of like mercury poisoning or something like that. Obviously there are things that can map some of the same behaviors through us, but are actually because of toxicity, not because of the rewiring of our being through spirit, through divinity.
That's true.
Making that happen.
Yeah, there's the spiritual and then there's the chemical that affects both the shamanistic, like you were saying, like back in the day, shamans would be very exalted, but in the 1800s you'd be tied to a stake. In 1950 you'd go to a ward and you would have all sorts of things like poisonous, and it would pretty much be a very uncomfortable scenario. And then now we have medications, and I keep up to date with all sorts of medications all the time. I have 6 medications which address my psychosis, which is I have an anti-anxiety, I have a mood stabilizer, and I have a blood pressure medication, and I have all sorts of other ones, like one that affects my positive mood, and one that takes away the psychosis and stuff like that. So I suggest a third thing I would suggest to people would be to get medication and accept the fact that the medication now is substantially better. I had a trail of medication from the 1950s. I had a guy who read out of a book who came from like Stanford or Harvard or something, and he would say, "Oh, you know, you have these symptoms, you're this," and he would give me like all sorts of old medications. For example, he gave me Respiridol, which is a medication that affects all your body parts. It feels like you have cotton balls in your head. It feels like you have all sorts of pain in your chest. You can't think straight. You have muddled thoughts. But now we have something called Abilify, which is completely smooth in taking away the psychosis and the different things that it brings about. And
can I just pause you right there just for a quick second? Because I noticed that you're on the topic of medication. And earlier, I'm not sure if you were on the call as yet, but we were speaking about spiritual medicine. And spiritual medicine from a traditional perspective that is given over from the earth, not from a pharmacopoeia of drugs from pharmaceutical companies and the various influences that have a medical industrial complex and the whole industrial establishment attached to that for profits and profiteering and various different patent structures and things like that. If anyone is going through the process of that spiritual evolution and are going through the challenges that you speak of, which are very real, very, very, very grounded types of experiences of challenges, the traditional approach is sacred medicine. And those sacred medicines are broad. There are many of them, many of which grow in your backyard. Dandelion is one of the staple sacred medicines of the traditional native cultures of North America and beyond. So we really need to get reconnected. If you want to talk about medicine, true medicine comes from the planet. True medicine comes from the things that are growing in our backyard, in the jungles of our world. So those are the things that we want to address, because then when you get into things like, say, entheogenics, which are the types of medicines that bring on that purposefully bring on, I wouldn't use the word psychosis. It's not the right term. I would call it maybe an omnosis, where you're getting like an omniscient perspective through your divinity or your divine self. And that's where things like peyote or iboga or ayahuasca, as you would experience down at Rhythmia, would bring about. Very different types of mushrooms are all very, very powerful entheogenic substances that can help you to reestablish and rewire those mechanisms within the being. Our being is much more profound than any pharmacopoeia, could ever touch. And in fact, all the pharmacopoeia is doing is masking symptoms. It's never curing anything. If it was truly a cure, you'd be able to go out of this medication structure that you've just listed within 10 days and be a whole human once again. You'd be a being that is radiating all of the beingness that you truly are, if that was a real medication. It's not a medication if it can't do that. It's just it's just placating symptoms. Now, I'm not about to try to say I'm the professional. Always seek medical advice from your medical professional and all that kind of stuff. However, if your medical professional isn't, say, a naturopath or a shamanic practitioner or something like that as well, you may want to have a few of those in your consultation circle to make sure that you do have a broader perspective on what's going on within your biological God-given being. Right. Play there. That's the space that I think is the most beneficial when it comes down, especially to the psychological aspects that you're sort of alluding to right now. If you want to get rid of those, actually, I think there's a great documentary, Mrs. Moon's Medicine. We should really, like, all of us and anyone watching, you got to watch that. If you feel like you're going through some struggles, listen to Jerry's story. It's on another level. And that's what this, I'm glad we kind of went to medicine and spoke about this a little bit, because the rewiring of collective consciousness to understand that medicine exists in your backyard. It exists as our forests. It exists as the cacophony of things that this body, the pharmacopoeia of the body, once provided with these different types of stabilizers. The body itself is the medicine. It's truly phenomenal. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of leave it there, not to get too long-winded, but you know, I wanted to make sure I pressed on that.
I just want to say thank you for jumping in and speaking to that, because as I was listening to you, Morgan Elder, talk about that, like on the pharmaceuticals and stuff like that, it was just right on the same wavelength of what Eddie spoke to, and if I would just to put it in a sentence, it's the difference between treating the symptom and treating the core cause, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like nobody's saying you shouldn't, right? As Eddie's saying, you know, go and seek a medical professional, but for example, the medical professionals down at Rhythmia and down in, you know, other places in the world actually do recommend treat the core, you know, the actual cause of the psychosis, and not just what's going to get you through the day, sort of thing. And that's what really we're talking about in this sort of aligning with spirit, because at the end of the day, it really is going to be about your relationship with your body, with your mind, with your breath, with your, you know, all of these different things. And if you have to numb, if you know you're experiencing some sort of trauma or something really intense and serious, you know, then treating it on a deeper level is going to actually lead to the liberation of it. Yeah, actually, I wanted to just maybe potentially pass it to Phil for a second, because he had unmuted earlier when this conversation first started, but him and Anthony started at the same time, and I was wondering if Philip had anything to jump in and add on this topic.
Yeah.
Oh, Philip, I think you.
How you mentioned. Am I good? Yeah, I was going to touch on how you mentioned standing within that circle and grounding within that circle, and Eddie, you brought it up how that's the common practice to as a madness and as something to shun, but see it as something to work through and to appreciate as part of the process of growth, right? So you know, we all have different levels of madness if we are growing. That's just part of the deal. So if you can do the sort of standing in that circle and grounded, sort of dwelling in it and working through it, you know, confine it to that, so that's a great way to really get through the depths of your own soul, you know. But the key is to have something to connect to. So I think it's cool that you're connecting quite literally with the ground, because, you know, if you just do it and you feel as effective, I think you kind of both have to have a partner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I try to keep it as limited to
the ground very well, in my opinion. But I just mentioned that.
I'm really compelled to jump in and say something here. I feel that we have come out of balance in this session of conversation, whereby we have gone quite strongly into the male energy of things, and we are building upon a point. We've reached a very focused point and very key topics we've covered, and we're still pushing forwards, protruding and penetrating into that message deeper. I personally feel that we need the balance in this conversation to go back to the female aspect, so probably hearing from Karen or Priscilla would be very vital at this point. So I just wanted to say that that's how I feel right now.
All right, I'll say something because I'm unmuted. I just really had just one thought to share, which kind of brings it all together. What Eddie was saying, we have forces working against us, and what I like to call, well, I've heard this term before, as in the things that in our backyard, you know, we might see them as meaningless grass, but it's actually organic intelligence. We have artificial intelligence, and organic intelligence is what's really like gonna help us ground us and heal us, and including all that plant medicine. And it was, I'm gonna bring it back to Devin. you know, when I was in that space of I had this big ego, and I was like, you know, it was through organic intelligence that I came to the realization that I was a co-creator. And with the realization that I am a co-creator, hey, am I gonna take this responsibility that if I change or help myself, it's eventually gonna help the world around me? Yes, I am gonna take that responsibility. And that's what has given me strength to continue to this path. And it brings back to Aaron, back to the choice that is that choice that I am going to choose to continue to use organic intelligence, and because it's abundant, it should be abundant, and find alignment, back to the topic, you know, and continue to use the tools that should be the tools that we use, that is around us and given to us by nature, by the garden. And in that whole play, we can find and continue to find alignment every day.
Hey guys, I just wanted to quickly say I got to step off the call here, but that everything this is absolutely astonishing. I love this conversation, and thank you all so much for being so present and sharing so much of what is real, that is flowing through you, the wisdom that is at the tip of your reality right now, and bringing that to the forefront, having the courage, the bravery, and the gentility to bring that forth and actually have this conversation. So thank you so much. I very much value that, and thank you for having me as part of the conversation. Hopefully I'm bringing something to the table that's helping you to further your journey. Blessings, guys.
Thanks, Eddie. See you later.
Thanks.
Well, we actually have been on for about an hour and a half now, so we probably are getting close to the end of this call. Devin, looks like your arms are really high up. Is it?
Well, a couple things I wanted to say real quick. It all kind of ties together, so I'll just kind of say it. Me personally, I've been doing a lot of studying in, like I was talking about earlier, mindful gardening, and we've been talking about how the trying to be one with the spirit, and we've been talking about how all things are connected for this talk. So one thing I wanted to bring forth to you guys, a theory that I have, considering the few things that I've learned, I wanted to put this on you guys, let it be a thought for the day, and see where it puts you all at. So when we put things like worm castings, horse manure, cow manure, and all that stuff on plants, they respond very well, of course, and they respond pretty all right, and it helps them bring some nutrients, blah, blah, blah. It brings about a decent response. When you put composted human manure and human urine on plants, they respond again, but it's actually like a 3 times response compared to the horse manure, cow manure, blah, blah, blah. Where I'm going with this subject is the fact that whenever I learned that, it seems like the bacterial world is the bacterial fungal world is the connection between everything. Because the best way I can see it, it's like when you put cow manure down on the earth, you're telling the plants in the earth you're growing food for cows. When you put horse manure on the earth, you're telling the earth, hey, there's horses here, you're growing food for horses. And when you put human compost down, you're throwing food for humans.
Hey, Devin, sorry, I have to interrupt you just for a second because you just went very muffled. It was very difficult to hear you.
Too bad. Can you hear me?
No, it's still pretty muffled. I mean, did you cover up a speaker or something, maybe, or? I don't know.
What's that?
Okay, that's better, I think.
Welcome. I just wanted to touch on how I think I've been learning for gardening and stuff. It seems like the bacterial world is the key connection between all things. Because I was saying, human manure brings about better results than any other compost that I've seen so far.
It's kind of, sorry, brother. It's just, it keeps dropping down to that like kind of muffled level. I'm not really sure, but are you essentially saying that we need to overhaul our waste systems to give our human shit out of the cities into the farms?
If you can hear me, that's not what I was trying to say. I was trying to say that we say things in everything is connected, but I think the human element and the bacteria world are two big things to talk about. I just wanted to leave that with you guys.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You know, it's in and out. Like when you first started, you're like, if you can hear me, and we were like, yeah, I can hear you, and then it would just kind of go down. So
I have headphones in. I think I heard what he was saying, Devin. He's saying that it's the human element in our own bacteria or whatever, and in our waste that is creating this accelerated response from the plants. And so by removing ourselves from that cycle of food generation, that's what's causing the problem. And
yes.
I just wanted to add something to that. It touches back on, I don't remember whose comment at this point, but I think it was Eddie's. But we often think of ourselves as a single biological unit, but we're not. We're a community of like 1 trillion single biological units. And so who and what we are, what role, what ego construct we put on is, the aggregate of all those voices. And that's all I had. I love everyone, and I have just thoroughly enjoyed this call today. So thank you all.
Thank you as well, both for translating and what you said and added. And maybe it's time that we pull a card. What do you guys think?
Yes.
Yeah, we're like on that. Well, I have a deck here, unless someone else wants to, or we just get a whole bunch of us as always. But yeah. Oh, we have the first one here. Joshua's bringing up the Queen of Wands. That's really good. That's that like supportive, nurturing, passionate female energy you bring to the table to help uplift and nurture the development of an idea. Anthony, he's got the Prince of Swords. We're pulling in the court cards today. The Prince of Swords is the mental aspect of the mind, the constantly thinking of new things, creating them and destroying them as quickly as they're made, because the mind is so readily available to think infinite number of thoughts that they can just come and go like this and like that, pulled by the other elements. Because the air just stays still unless it has something that's actually compelling it to move, which includes the heat from the sun, the fire, the water, the movement of water, and then the movement of the earth as well, and the tectonic shifts and stuff like that. Yeah, here you go. Okay, I'm gonna get mine here.
No, we got the King of Discs there too.
The King of Discs? Oh yeah, okay, great. Devin, you have a deck. That's awesome. I also got the so we got the King of Discs. I've got the first non-court card. But Devin's first, the King of Discs, is about that passion, it's really like the spiritual drive to get the work done, like the spiritual no nonsense. I know my highest purpose and I'm doing the work. Like I'm not letting my thoughts or my feelings get in the way. It's just getting done. And then the Six of Discs here is generosity, which is the act of giving and the abundance that comes from giving when we're just open and freely able to share our gifts with the world and give of ourselves without really worrying about what's going to be received in that process, what's coming back. Yeah, that's that.
Kind of fun. That's actually the side that I'm born under.
Sorry, Devin. Joshua.
Luckily,
Whoa.
I was the Knight of Discs.
Yeah. Well, it's also the King of Discs. It's like, because there's no, the knights and the kings are the same.
I just thought it was weird that that happened to be the card that I pulled.
Why is that weird? There's a wonderful bird in the background on Philip's end there. Or a squeaking of some other kind.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No,
I was gonna say I think it's cool how we had a king, queen, and a prince, and generosity. It's a good mix.
Yeah, actually, good eye, good catch. It is.
Joshua just pulled one of the God cards too.
Who did? Oh, that's funny. I got that one this morning too, actually. That's
it was right as you were commenting on the bird. I was going to pick the deck up, and that card popped out, and I went, "Oh, well, that's the truth. That is a pretty sounding bird."
It's all about speaking, and I think maybe that's how we can end this call here, is with the kind of the resolve of, like, you know, we were talking about how to help others, you know, find the spiritual path and have it be an easy one or what have you, right? And really, like, sharing and speaking from the space of your own love and truth and joy and giving just makes it very appealing when other people see that, and they're like, how can I be like you? And you're like, well, just read the Tao of Pooh, you know, get you started, and just to take it from there. So with that, do we want to do a closing meditation? Does anybody have anything, a couple breaths lined up for us? Anthony.
Hi. There's something that we were doing on the last call with myself, Josh, Brandon, and Karen, which was to identify where on the planet we all are and visualize the map that makes up, and then connect in real time of where north to south, east, west is, and visualize who you're closest to, and then where everyone else is beyond that. So as we breathe in meditation, we are visualizing this physical network and breathing into each other through the intentions.
I was actually doing that for all. I was seeing it like we were all one big constellation, and all the stars. I was like seeing the lines that drew us together, and I was trying to brighten them, bring out more connection between us.
Perfect. Yeah, that's something we can do in a closing meditation if everybody's happy with that. I guess we would go through. So I'm not sure exactly where everyone is, but where are you, Morgan, in the States? Okay, Morgan's not there. Karen, you're...
Sorry, I was doing something.
So Morgan, what's again? Are you in? Is it Arizona?
Yeah, Arizona. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember that. I sent a cloak to you. So Morgan's in Arizona.
Yeah.
So you can imagine, you know, southwest United States. And Karen, you're in, San Francisco, right? So you're in California. So Arizona and California connected to there. Phil, whereabouts are you?
In Texas.
Texas. Okay, so we've got like a kind of line going across all that border of Mexico now. Priscilla?
Saskatchewan, Canada.
Canada. Okay, so where in Canada, sorry?
Saskatchewan is right in the middle.
Oh yeah, SK, right? I'm looking at a map. My geography of United States and Canada is not so great, so I'm just visualizing this. Okay, so then we've got...
I would be probably right between Priscilla and Phil. I'm in Oklahoma.
Yeah, okay, above Texas, yeah. And I know, well, I think we all know that Aaron and Jordan are both in Canada as well, in Winnipeg. So that's, is it on just west of the center of Ontario? Is that right? Or like southwest?
It's to the east of Saskatchewan, to the west of Ontario, yeah.
Oh, right in the middle. Okay, so we've got two at the top. I've got here. And
then where is Devin at?
I'm down here in Indiana.
Indiana.
Louisiana. Oh, great. I'll be there in 2 weeks. Louisiana. Okay.
And then Anthony,
so we've got a nice strong line. So yeah, I'm in Lithuania right now, which is northeast Europe. So like pretty much as far northeast Europe you can get before going into Russia. So we've got a very strong line along the south coast of all of America. We've got a very strong line at the top, kind of bridging that. And then I'll be a little blip on the side here in Europe. But then it's not obviously just like what Devin was saying. It's not just this spherical grid where obviously we're in between, we're going through, we're connecting directly to each other and extending out. So maybe with just a final closing meditation, we can visualize that grid. And if you know your compass directions of where you are in relation to everyone else, we can spend some time to breathe and visualize that, connect to each other, and imagine the connection that we create pulsating and emanating out to all of the people around us and the matter around us. All is life. Life is all. And breathe a sense of freedom and release into the grid so that it may flow where it needs to go. Bind us, connect us together, yet free us from the shackles of stagnant creation and interplay. And if we sit for a while, Jordan, you can pick it up when we're ready.
On your next exhale, let out a sigh. Wish I had a singing bowl to just ding.
I do.
That's what we need. I was a little confused, Anthony, because you were like, and Jordan can just pick it up and take it away. And I was like, what? I'm like ending the meditation? When? How? I hope I did that right. If that was the intended, or if I just stole your ending, I'm sorry.
No. I was just like letting it open. And I said, pick it up when we're ready. When I said when we.
Oh, Aaron busted out the big guns.
What?
I had to.
Every chat.
That is our platinum practitioner singing bowl. You might have seen us play on our live chats on Facebook. We sometimes do live calls and play bowls, but they're really fun.
I'm good.
How can you be good? Okay.
I love you guys and say hi, and I'm like, I love you guys.
You know, one trip, like one sound session with those in person, and you're like on cloud 9 for the rest of the day. It's pretty intense. It's really good.
Just like to say, Anthony, I would just like to say I really like about the card. I always like to have a sense of like where I'm facing, and I try to imagine like where the sun is and all that. For me, it's just very practical, living in awareness of like,
Yeah, definitely.
I guess where you're facing and everything.
It strengthens the connection in terms of our beliefs, in terms of how we believe energy is directed, and may not be necessary, but it certainly helps and channels through that. And I, since I'm talking again, when I was introducing this before, I noticed that you wanted to say something, Josh. So if you did want to mention something before, looking like you don't know what I'm talking about, no thoughts coming. So okay, don't worry.
I just thought I was just gonna say I just thought it was beautiful the way you handed that off, and just that we had that brief moment of silent meditation, and then Jordan just came in perfectly, and it was all in flow, collective group meditation. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone.
It's a pleasure and a joy to be a part of it.
My love for you all.
Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us today on this call. It was an absolute delight, as always. With that, we bring this call to an end, close the broadcast, and we'll see you on the next full moon, which actually should line up with probably right before we leave. So we might do it because we're going to go back to Rhythmia and do some speaking there on the 29th. So maybe we'll try and peg in a call like Saturday the 28th or something like that. So yeah, see you in a couple weeks. Bye, everybody.